Hello, everyone. It is Monday, the 19th of February, 2024. And I wasn't planning on doing an afternoon video, but after a few conversations I've had since my last video this morning, I feel compelled to because at least in my own head, if I just share this now, I'm not going to be OCD about it. And I was supposed to have a grad studies person do an interview with me again for 1,200 hours, but she ended up having a work thing come up. And so she had to cancel on me last minute, like within 15 minutes of the interview, but it's okay. And also because of coming in from Quebec back to Ontario in a blizzard last night, it's I'm exhausted. So like even though it's a really nice day out, like I look out and it makes me want to go for like a long run or a long hike or like a bike ride with my dogs, and I'm just like I'm physically I'm exhausted, and plus I was up around 3 a.m. and I just couldn't get back to sleep again. I'm just having issues sleeping, but I want to get this video out. It's controversial. The it's about UN land grabs. I've talked about the UN quite a lot for years, even on my whiteboards, which is why the thumbnail for this video is my whiteboard from December 2022. I'll just pull it up. Why isn't it coming down? It's on X anyway, so I can put it up. Anyway. Maybe I'll get a better, I want to zoom in. I have so many images up. Here we go. Here we go. Okay, let's see here. Nope. Why did I do that again? Okay, so this was my predictions for January 2023 until 2024. And ongoing. The reason why I haven't updated my whiteboard, I just gave it a year prediction because like I'm like, even with that, like I might have to update it 6 months from now because I've done that before. But I'm like, this is just a snapshot that was not even updated. I was talking about NATO, even then, WEF, UN, even then, right there. Philanthropists, corporations, banks, Hollywood, heads of institutions, same agenda pushed. I talked about that there was going to be an increase in man-made and natural disasters. That's an end, not an arrow. Climate change, they're going to blame it on that, I said. Even in 2020, 2021, I was talking about SPARS. That was on my whiteboards. I talked about it again. Is that going to be 2025, 2027? I said, is this going to be the year? That was last year. Is there going to be a fake planned alien invasion? Predictive seed planting going on like around this time? And yes, there was. There was a lot of talk about alien invasion stuff. And I'm like, yeah, planting seeds, programming, controlled opposition. I even then I was calling out Rebel News. Not everyone. There's great people that are journalists within Rebel News as well, just to be clear. And I've shared their content, even David Menzies and Brad Krawchuk, and I keep forgetting her friggin' name. Anyway, Ugolini or something like that. Ugolini, I don't know. Anyway, so there was going to be an increase in food shortages, farms, agriculture targeted, animals killed, poisoned, fertility impacted. So I've been saying this for friggin' years. And then with HARP and DARPA, geoengineering, cloud seeding, light shows in the sky, this all came to fruition. And it's like, this is what I mean. It's like freaking clockwork. Anyway, censorship bills should be stricken down, but I'm like, there's going to be more censorship bills. In Canada last year, we had multiple censorship bills pass. It's like, I'm not even freaking kidding you. And this is what I mean. Like, I'm not psychic or anything like that. Like, I can't see the friggin' future. It's just so obvious when you are an international security expert and someone that's actually well read into this stuff and actually goes to the past to try to like learn from the past and has for many years and assesses things, not just looking at what is being said, but everything also surrounding said events and who's saying it, why they're saying it, who paid them to say it. anyway, surveillance, illegal overreach, surveillance. I'm like illegal and overreach within Canada by spies. Like I just call it what it is. and criminals from other countries. They have militaries, law enforcement, COVID teams, and Interpol, even within Canada. I was talking about the 15-minute cities across Canada. Talking about like suburbs. Left, right, same bird. Learned behaviors. Flat Earth. This was my example of like a graph that we use for that I use when I want to talk about political spectrums and societal spectrums, like where people are generally placed. And I'm like around here, it would be me. I would be kind of like more like center, but like more center, like left anarchist, but in the middle. Like I'm like pretty much in the like look like, so like I'm not anything extreme at all. I'm more libertarian, I would say. And there's a lot of people that are slamming libertarians now as well. It's part of the psyops of propaganda. One of the more commonsensical political parties people are pushing away because there's people that are conservative and or Republican and or Democrat and or liberal that want those votes. They don't want you voting libertarian, and they have like millions, if not billions of dollars invested in their campaigns. And so of course they're going to slam libertarians. Anyway, so even like in December of 2021, I was like, we are here. So we are leftist, the far left, and I'm like, we are at the like you've got left end of the spectrum, right end of the spectrum. Neither is good when you go too extreme on either side. And then when you have like the Y, you've got the X, but you've got the Y graph too. And so you have authoritarianism at the top, and then you have anarchy at the bottom, where you have full government control at the top, or full control of a society at the top, or a community, and then you have anarchy where there's zero control at all. And so there also needs to be institutions in place and stuff like that to safeguard and protect the more vulnerable from predatory type behaviors and stuff like that. And people that are more predatory are more inclined to go into politics, unfortunately, because like this is a prime area where you can prey on people in a very deceitful, but like you can hide it, right? Not as out and out, not as obvious. I talk about gematria as well. I even say here like the other's flat, multi-dimensional simulation. So not just flat, but a multi-dimensional. Talking about SADS, SADS, possibly, allegedly, maybe. I have to say that because my friggin' videos keep on getting dinged. So yeah, I can mention a lot more stuff, but I'm just saying that I've been talking about this for many years, and it would be nice if people like Bill Blair, who was the chief of police in Toronto during the G20 summits when they illegally tortured and ostracized, criminalized, arrested, snatched citizens within the community. And he's the one that also was involved. He was the Minister of National Defense, conveniently enough, like I'll reiterate forever, when they declared the Emergency Act. The War Measures Act is what it used to be called. And Bill Blair, Minister of National Defense during that as well. So what are the odds? And I will reiterate, there are men that I know that have resigned because of Bill Blair. Good men, solid, really checked out, of service for decades, super fit, like bodybuilders and everything like that. Like they literally checked every friggin' box you want to have to be for someone to be of service to Canadians. Like you're paying for what you get. You know what I mean? Would be these guys. And because Bill Blair was so corrupted and such a schmuck and and anyway, their words, not mine, and weak in character and in so many other ways as well. And so there's not a lot of good things to say from his own chain of command and people that he's worked around. All right. And then you already got what the citizens of Toronto felt about him, because there's a lot of lawsuits. There was a lot of charges. There was a lot of like people that were victimized 100%. I've already shared that. And I hope that people do look at that video. But like this guy needs jail. Like this guy had made people that were leading restaurants absolutely like not criminals at all, and literally had them arrested, taken from their families, like in people like beat up, assaulted, watching women urinate, and like you name it was done. And again, the proof is there. Unfortunately, it's disgraceful. This is Canada, but there's body cam footage. There's a lot of surveillance from people, luckily, that had their cameras out even in 2010. And it's 2024. 2022, 12 years after that incident, that guy not only wasn't fucking fired, okay, but he was hired and promoted, and now it's $500,000 a year as the Minister of National Defense. And he claims a lot of his expenses as well. And so he's a criminal. He's disgusting. Whether he knows it or not, he's disgusting at his job. And poor leadership, like parasitic, unethical, immoral humans, you don't get good societies out of that. There's not good outcomes, right? Like the Universe 25, Stanford prison experiment, so many other things I've talked about even earlier today. Nothing good comes out of people like that leading or being in these positions of leadership because they exploit it. He's clearly someone that has caused a lot of harm and suffering against Canadians. And even there are even like Coots brothers that are in jail because of him and refusing to listen to citizens, treating us like the enemy. Like, this is the crazy thing. Like, people within government, and again, I still work with government, and I was government, right? Like 23 years of my life of service with or around, within or amongst government for 23 years. And so it just frustrates me that people like this are the ones that are promoted and selected that are clearly corrupt by corrupt people, because again, it's a gang thing that's going on right now. And now with land grabs, I'm going to talk about, because like these people are not bright enough or wise enough or experienced enough, actually, because of ego being in the way as well. But like they're not tracking, or maybe they are tracking what they're doing. I don't know. But the UN stealing land. UNDRIP is a massive land grab masquerading as restitutions. This is happening all over Canada and in the US as well. But the UN has been the one, and WEF and the people that own and subsidize and fund these groups, these philanthropy, like even the and Bill and Melinda Gates, like see what they're absolutely funding the UN. And I'm saying we should not be funding the UN for anything anymore until this stuff gets unfucked. Okay, I'm censored anyways on YouTube, so like I already restrict myself. It's 18 and over for all of my videos. It's default settings. And so if you are under the age of 18, please, like your parents failed you with the censorship, or you're just clever enough to get away from, like, you're probably maybe on another computer, but don't stress your life out right now. Focus on finishing school, being healthy, getting off TikTok, and don't friggin' stress yourself with my videos, but forward them to your parents.
Hybrid fascist communist. What this UNDRIP is really is a UN bomb of mass destruction against Western civilization. Really, that's what it is. And they're using this indigenous issue, which a lot of people are going to fall for, including, the various different bands. But once they realize that basically they're putting themselves under the UN control through this or through their dictates, then it changes the whole story. We're at war is what's happening. We're under attack by the UN globalists, right? And they want to have it so that we will own nothing. They want to bring us into like a hybrid fascist communist type situation where the corporations and government work together, and we're the serfs.
Yeah. And that's why these people that are affiliated with like other energy, Smoky and Ranger, get out. So distracting. They're communicating with each other, but it's so distracting. There's like companies that are pushing like Agenda 2030 essentially, and they want us to be like carbon neutral, all of this stuff. Again, it's all a friggin' propaganda psyops campaign that people are friggin' falling for. And you've got big players like billionaires that are pushing carbon tax stuff that own electrical companies and SpaceX. Okay, yes, it's Elon I'm talking about. But anyway, like, what the fuck? And people are like, oh yeah, it's a good idea because Elon said it. Idiots. No offense. Oh my God. And they're looking at increasing the carbon tax in Canada too. But what do you expect? So we have like friggin' sock boy that's like that's slamming oil companies and trying to impact their dollar. And the oil companies, again, they're already corrupt as fuck right now and taking a lot of money from us and selling the U.S. or like bringing the oil to the U.S. and then selling it to us at higher rates than they do the Americans. It's cheaper to get fuel in the U.S. and Canada with the Canadian friggin' oil. And so so we should be looking at ways of like at the provincial level, getting more provinces to access oil that's underneath the friggin' ground instead of relying on that, because even within our own country, we're getting fucked over by oil companies. But they're also getting pissed off at people like Trudeau and these people that are pushing 2030, and so they don't care to keep on exploiting us and increasing the prices, because they're like, you're phasing us out. Like, that's your plan in first world countries, is to phase us out. Like, why wouldn't we try to get as much money as we possibly can, you know, exploit this opportunity, and then who gives a shit about carbon tax or any of that stuff anyways, you know? Like, sure, I'll push it, whatever, you know. It's frustrating, but it is what it is. And so, and even with roads not being properly maintained or serviced, or not like making better roads in rural areas so that people can live again like a more moderate traditional lifestyle. This is all stuff that people like Stephen Guilbeault, that probably lives in an apartment complex like in a major city and has never lived outside of like a cage his entire life. He doesn't understand, you know what I mean? That's not how everyone should be living at all. It's not sustainable for everyone. And there needs to be people that are heavily invested in like the oil feeds, drilling, waste management, friggin' like the hard labor jobs, teaching, like nursing, medicine, absolutely agriculture, truck drivers, they all, like, just to support him, like, and doing a shitty job as a member of parliament. Like, he's an extremist. He's a climate extremist. He's wasting so much money, and he's publicly funded. Like people like that need to wake the fuck up, get a more useful job, and or become more educated in your job so you actually know what you're talking about. Because he's not an expert in anything unless he's actually like hired just to cause societal collapse. And then with land grabs too, like, you spin it on something that like people are not going to question, because there's a lot of controversy around this topic. But like, even with like restitution and reparations, what people are pushing for certain demographics, even within Canada, you can't question it, right? Like, even with the mass graves that they were claiming that were at various residential schools that were proven to be like, there's no proof yet. Okay, it was rocks, not skeletal remains that were in these alleged mass graves, and no one's reporting on that. And this is something that was known even as early as 2015. So why is it only now being reported in the news in the last few years? There's so much I could talk about, but like, I'll just allow this guy to talk a little bit.
This is Dan Dix here, reporting for Press for Truth. And as you can tell by the title of this video, UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, sounds good on the surface. But when you begin to peel back the layers of this onion, you will begin to see that the United Nations
Dan Dix,
is
this
using this
idea
as restitutions to masquerade for a massive land grab. And they currently have their target set on Canada, but Canada is not the only nation that they are seeking to do this to. Everybody may soon come under this. So joining us on the line right now to discuss all of this and help us break this down is Ron Valiant, a man who's been covering this for over 5 years now. So Ron, thank you so much for taking some time to speak with us here today on Press for Truth. Now, the reason why we're speaking here today is because just a couple of days ago, somebody said to me on X, formerly known as Twitter, Dan, why don't you ever cover UNDRIP? And I thought to myself, I don't know, what's that thing again? Looked it up and was like, oh yeah, this is really bad. This is something that Press for Truth should cover. And I was pointed in your direction as being the go-to guy to speak to on this. So let's just jump right into it, Ron.
Okay.
What is UNDRIP? And what would you say are some of the main issues that people should be concerned with here?
Yeah, well, thanks, Dan, for reaching out. Appreciate it. I've been trying to reach you on this for quite a while, but so now we're finally doing the show. Well, basically, UNDRIP is a United Nations declaration, right? So right away, it's United Nations involved. And we know that the United Nations ultimately wants to be able to create a world government, you know, superseding national states. And so that's a warning flag right there. But it's 20 years in the making to create the UNDRIP document. Actually, here it is right here. And it's actually not a very big document. If you look at it, it's pretty thin. So it's worthwhile. You can just go ahead and download it off the internet. Just look up UNDRIP document. And so it's 20 years in the making by the Indigenous experts. And and what you have to do in order to be able to understand UNDRIP is Article 26, which we will get into a little bit later on in our slide presentation. But really, this is the biggest untold story in Canada because it's going to fundamentally change everything. We're going to find that we're going to lose our land rights, like you say, the massive land grab. It's going to be a situation where resource development is going to be heavily curtailed to meet, UN Agenda 2030 SDG goals. It's also going to be a key factor in the World Economic Forum's declaration that by 2030 you'll own nothing. And so this is really a big thing, but it's been very tough. Like you said, I've been at this for quite a long time trying to let people know about it. And what I really wanted to do was get it on major media so that we could actually raise awareness in Canada and people could actually stand up against it. But the way it's been always since I learned about it in 2019 was that it's all done behind the scenes. Everything, all the negotiations, all the deals and everything else is going on behind the scenes. And the average person really doesn't know about it at all. But finally, we're having a nice break here. We're having a development here, like in BC, I believe, or maybe he's not. It's Professor of Law, Bruce Pardee. And he wrote a National Post article regarding BC's recent development, and that what they want to do is they want to consult with people until I think it's March 24th, and how the province is going to co-govern with the Indigenous folks as to the uses of Crown land. And so the air bubbles are coming to the surface, but what's going on below the surface is still the monster that people don't see. And so that's why we're doing this show.
A lot of this comes down to the very definition of what Indigenous means, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But you mentioned Article 26 as being particularly important to understanding just what they're trying to do here, as you said, behind the scenes. So maybe we could break that one down a little bit, and then we can go from there.
If you want to, then I sent you the different graphics in order, but it's further down. You can just see it if you can pull it up. But Article 26, what it states is, okay, now when you read the book UNDRIP or the Declaration, when you start to read it, it talks about that the Indigenous, and one thing to note is that the Declaration doesn't define what Indigenous is. So it's 20 years in the making by the Indigenous experts, and they go ahead and they say, well, this is what the rights are for these Indigenous, but they don't define what Indigenous is. And we can get into that later, a little bit later on. But so that's a real thing. But when you read it, it says, well, the Indigenous have the rights to their cultural and heritage practices, and on and on. You go, oh, like, yeah, of course, and you're reading it. You say, of course, But then when you read Article 26, then it changes the ballgame. And then, so the way to understand the document is to read Article 26 first, and then see how everything else would fall into that. So Article 26 states that the Indigenous, whoever they are, have the rights to the lands, territories, and resources to which they traditionally owned, occupied, or otherwise used. So in Canadian law now, you can have the Indigenous using their words or as a document, as a legal document. If they say that they've used an area, that can be a legal document in a court of law now.
So they can make a claim to your land just by simply your own private land by saying they once used it?
That's right. It's actually
familiar. There's a little bit of this been going on in other areas of the world, like Israel and Palestine.
What's going on? Okay, so in Campbell River Mirror, they did an article in 2021 and basically stating that it was a lawyer representing the Aboriginals. And he was saying that BCers are in for a great shock because most of the Crown land is going to be given over to the Indigenous. So that was back in 2021. And that, because I was trying to warn people about this whole thing with UNDRIP, and then that article came up and all of a sudden there's proof, hey, look at this. This is really seriously going on here, right? Now, one thing I should mention here, all throughout Earth's history, we've had war and conquests and all kinds of things. And, it's very difficult for us to go back and peel back the onion and or whatever. Like if you think of Europe and all of the different World War I, World War II, and all the different changes that have happened, borders and everything else like that, for them to go back and to change all that is just ridiculous to try and do that. The best solution is to go from where we're at, even though I don't like our situation, you don't like our situation, but here we are. The best way to go forward is to basically proceed, from this point forward and make changes that we need to. What this UNDRIP is really is a UN bomb of mass destruction against Western civilization. Really, that's what it is. And they're using this indigenous issue, which a lot of people are going to fall for, including, the various different bands. But once they realize that basically they're putting themselves under the UN control through this or through their dictates, then it changes the whole story. And so on one hand, people are saying, yeah, we're going to get our land back and everything else like that. But think of the consequences, because what has happened in Canada is we put trillions of dollars and hundreds of years of work and effort upon the land. Now, where's the reconciliation on that in this whole thing? It has nothing to do with it. Basically, what they're trying to do is they want to be able to, and all of Canada is being claimed right now, but they want to be able to revert back to these various different indigenous bands. And
it's like they want to use the indigenous people as a means of being able to take this over, and hopefully some of the heritage chiefs in the bands will see this for what it is and not accept the offer and be kind of like, thanks but no thanks. But we see
there are some who've done that, but unfortunately, palms are greased and everything else. And just, the fact that you could all of a sudden claim all this huge territory and start generating wealth off of it is, very compelling, I would think, But okay, so BC went ahead and adopted it, in October 25th, roughly, of 2019. Yeah, and then I had someone in northeastern BC who reached out to me, basically, and they had a ranch, they still do, and they would go to the government and ask to be able to lease more Crown land or even buy it. And they did it twice, and the government got back to them in a proper time, and everything went good. The third time they did it, they got the result a year later, which is when I was running in that election. And the letter basically stated, we do not know which indigenous bands will be claiming the Crown land around your property, so you're going to have to work it out with them. So the thing is, if they're claiming the Crown land around that person's farm as being their territory, what about their farm? So right now it's basically the Crown land that's being, and people will say, well, yeah, give them the Crown land, but it's not that, it's everything. It's a whole package, right? And then another proof on all of this is basically what happened in Vancouver, where you're in Vancouver, I understand? Okay, so Vancouver. So the Vancouver City Council, they went in and commissioned a UNDRIP strategy plan for the city. And I did a video on that, basically, and that was at the end of 2022. And in that plan, it basically states that 3 Indian bands, the Squamish, the Tsleil-Waututh, and I forget the other one, they basically are the rights and title holders of all the land underneath Vancouver. And this is actually upheld in courts. That's the whole thing. That's the thing about it. And people don't know about this thing. So then I go through basically this. I think the video is on my YouTube channel under Ron Valent. It would be called Vancouver Has New Owners, something like that. But anyhow, in this UNDRIP strategy plan, it talks about, shared finance, shared income. The police are to be educated on UNDRIP. You got, like their cultural sites, they want to be able to have those back, type of thing.
And even taxpayer money, as I understand it, will eventually be funneled into this directly from Canadian taxpayers.
Oh, absolutely, all of it. Yeah, yeah. That's the thing, is that and not just the taxpayer money, but you got these politicians who are going along with it, and that's the key factor. So basically, the UN has this declaration. It only comes into force into Canada through the politicians, and it's not just the politicians. That's the thing. It's also going through corporations are going along with it. You got the leaders of the educational system forcing it down. So, in the school systems now, they basically are doing land declarations. We acknowledge that we're basically on unceded or Indian treaty land or whatever, right? And it's an indoctrination technique. And when I was up in northeastern BC in 2019, it was going on up there for 4 years already. And I was campaigning and I was talking to a business owner who does multi-million-dollar gravel contracts. And it's a small town, and he was complaining about, them having to do these land acknowledgements, right?
Mhm.
And I said, well, it's a small town. Why don't you just get the word out that if they start a meeting with saying that we're on, Treaty 8 land, everyone just gets up and leaves, and there's no meeting, and keep on doing that. And he said it would be noted who left, and we would lose our contracts.
And I think the reason why that is because they use this notion that anybody who speaks out against this is racist against the indigenous community, which of course is absolute nonsense. So some people may be in fear of being labeled a racist just for speaking out about this, is just going to hush up about it.
Oh, for sure. It's just a stand down technique, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was interviewed at the Prince George University, and the fellow interviewing me says, we acknowledge that we're on the unceded land of these different bands. And then afterwards I said, well, how come you said that at the very beginning? And he says, well, I have to. And I said, what happens if you didn't? He said, I'd probably lose my job, right? So it's a top-down thing that people are forced to do. And now it's going all over the place. Even in the NHL, you'll see it basically. And there was an Oilers game that they said that we are on the unceded, or we're on the treaty land, right?
Right.
Okay, so one of the things is propaganda to basically, mind wash everyone into this thing that we're on someone else's land. But the other thing too is that when you got mayors and politicians and whatnot saying that we acknowledge that we're on this land, it can be used in a court case down the road using UNDRIP Article 26, stating that, see, look, even these people are saying that, this land is our land. Okay, so that happened in BC, and with the Vancouver issue there, that was great to see that document, because now it's absolutely bulletproof that this is going on, because that's been the hardest part, because trying to educate people on this, they say, no, you're just exaggerating it. You're making it more than what it is. It's just political theater. They're just saying they're going to do this, and it's not really going on, and blah, blah, blah. And then what happened was, it was the end of 2021, and I would make videos, and it was a throne speech, for the new government with the Liberals there. And in there, they basically said a one-liner that no one caught, Rebel News didn't catch it, no other alternative media that I know. And it said, we will reintroduce an UNDRIP bill. So then I made a video, it got good traction, and then people reached out and we started working against this bill. And so we did that. And so that happened in 2022, and it passed actually in June of 2022. And just when it had passed the House of Commons, that's when this whole thing all across the news went talking about the Kamloops graves, and all of that was strategically planned, obviously, because I had known about those graves 20 years earlier, right? It was an old story. And so it was a stand down technique. If anyone was to stand up against this issue now, would they be a racist and all this, everyone's emotions are all, wired up, right? But in that standing committee of Bill C-15, that's what it was called, Bill C-15. So Bill C-15 states that all Canadian law is to be consistent with the Declaration, which is UNDRIP, okay? And so there's usually a first reading, a second reading, a standing committee, and then a final vote. And from what I understand, they actually put the standing committee ahead of the second reading. There is kind of unprecedented. You can fact check me on that. That's how I understood it. But anyhow, there was two conservatives who were, sorry about that. There were two conservatives who were on that standing committee, and the conservatives is what we would look to as far as being the barriers of protection, for the conservative Canadian type of thing, right? And we had Zoom meetings with both of them. And so with Arnold Viersen, he's from Alberta, I said to him, this is probably the most important bill in Canadian history. It's going to change everything. How come you're not warning anyone? I don't see anything on your social media or YouTube channel. And what he said kind of blew us all away. He said, some things are better left unsaid. And we were also shocked that no one said, why Well, we knew why, because he'd it's like standing in front of a freight train, he'd get killed. Right? Okay. So there you have it. So there you have a politician who's on the standing committee. That's his, duty to be able to. He didn't even go ahead and leak the story out to someone, and get it out or anything. It was just go along to get along, right? And then the other one, Jamie Schmel, he was the vice chair of that standing committee. And to me, when I saw his, reactions and whatnot, because the whole 8-hour thing, it looked like a kid at high school at a party, kind of giggling and, like, what, did you even read this document? But anyhow, in our Zoom meeting, and normally I wouldn't reveal what happens in these Zoom meetings, but this is so egregious, and this is such a huge, monster situation in Canada now that I am saying this stuff. So with Jamie, he said, it's a shame that no one knows about UNDRIP. And I said, well, isn't that on you? You're the official opposition. You're well paid. I mean, you got the capability to be able to warn people. And he says, yeah, but we need help, he said. Need help. I've been dedicating 3 years of my life to this. I haven't been working. I haven't been earning any money trying to warn Canadians and everything else and fight this stuff. And you're telling me this. But that was just BS, because he has not said a word since. Neither has any other MP. You're not going to, if you ever hear any politician talk about it, it's lollipops and rainbows and how reconciliation is going to be so fantastic. But all of this reconciliation, everything else that's tied to it, is all leading to the fulfillment of UNDRIP, because it's a whole box of crayons, Because now what happens in UNDRIP is that you're going to have, okay, so if they're claiming all the land now, and they will be probably given the land in, various different ways. But so now all of a sudden you're on someone else's land. What rights do you have then? You're a renter, you're, a settler, I guess you'd say, on someone else's land. Mm-hmm. And if they say, well, hey, that's important land to us, it's a sacred site, we need you to get off. Well, that's the way it's going to go. Right. And then on top of that, when you got UN Agenda 2030, which is really the big umbrella that all of this is under, that Stephen Harper, Pierre Poilievre, and the Khans, they're the ones who signed on Canada onto that in September 27, 2015. And then they handed off the baton to Trudeau, and Trudeau's been implementing it. But it's not just Trudeau, it's all the other premiers, and it goes all the way down to the city level, as we see with.
And it's unfortunate. So just like the G20 summits, like with the peaceful, very peaceful protests, and people that weren't even involved in the protests, they were just in their own apartments or going into their own apartments, or they were going to restaurants. But this was under the Conservative Party, right? Harper was in power at that time. And but look what happened with Trudeau, like emergency acts declared. And but this was under Bill Blair, with a lot of his involvement in it too. So it's not even that, right? It's like the advisors, the experts, like I keep on friggin' saying, that they choose, that they think they can trust and rely on, they're getting duped, and it's people that are not suitable at all to be the positions they're in. Chief Slowly included in that, who was the chief of police in Ottawa, and others as well. There are great people that could take these positions and these roles, people that I know personally, and they're getting overlooked, passed over, fired, charged, suspended, character assassinated, vilified, held back for people like that. And it's all related with this UN stuff as well. Like, I'm going to break this up a little bit just so it's not like that video that ton of time. But if you want to know, like, just put in a simple search. Look at the Vatican UN connection. Unlike any modern nation, the Vatican City does not support its citizen. Rather, it provides a base for the central administration of the Roman Catholic Church. The Holy See was regarded as a non-member state of the UN. Pope Paul VI established the first Holy See permanent observer mission on March 21st, 1964. The Vatican was admitted as a non-member state at the UN in 1964. It can still vote, though, by the way, which enables it to vote, it's already saying it here, in various UN conferences and to participate in the General Assembly discussions and consensus agreements. So much with the doesn't have the democratic credentials to join the EU yet. Even the Vatican City, which is considered to be its own country, its own rules, like absolute monarchy, all that stuff. The reason why it's in place and the reason why it's like that and the reason why there's zero accountability that's held. And by the way, what country protects the Vatican? The Swiss guards. And so you've got that Italian, Swiss, Roman Catholic Church, Swiss connection as well. So Swiss guards, core Swiss soldiers responsible for the safety of the Pope, often called the world's smallest army. So NATO also reportedly has diplomatic relations with the 5 European microstates, Andorra, Liechtenstein, Monaco, San Marino, and Vatican City. I've been to, not to Andorra, but I don't think, sounds familiar, but maybe. Anyway, I've been to Liechtenstein, I've been to Monaco, I've been to Vatican City, I think San Marino as well, but don't quote me on that, I don't know. But so these microstates surrounded by NATO and have only nominal militaries as part of the OSCE, but do not participate in NATO PFP. It's crazy stuff. Fernando Verges Alzaga is the he's the president of Vatican City, which is a country, since 2021. There's been popes that have they have illegitimate and legitimate children. You know, so people think that they're all you know, adhering to these vows of celibacy. That is so incorrect for a lot of people. And unfortunately, because of how their system is laid out, there's zero accountability. There's no charges that can be laid. They're allowed to do this. And that's why when they're affiliated or connected with these groups that we're seeing as philanthropy groups or helping, they're also possibly, allegedly connected with human trafficking, drug trafficking, involvements, stuff as well. I wish I was making this stuff up. I like, you know, this is the stuff that keeps me up at night. Because when you find this stuff out, right, like as a child, like you believe like the Queen or you know, the Pope, you know, like that there's these people are, you know, even astronauts, that they're people like you know, they're propped up, right? Like you were brainwashed and believing them, we can trust them. And it's also a good strategy and tactic too for astronauts, because even within these space agencies, within NASA, RASA, ISS, all these different organizations throughout the world, the reason why people like Epstein and other agents were trying to lure not only people that were like, you know, very important persons, but also scientists. They were like reaching out specifically for people that were brilliant geniuses, engineers as well. Even not Brett Weinstein, but his Eric Weinstein. Even he was sought out because of the like the scientific stuff that he was coming out with by Jeffrey Epstein. And but luckily, like anyways, allegedly he had no involvement with that. Like he had zero interest or anything like that. And still to this day, like speaks out on that stuff, obviously. But like, these people are intentionally sought out because they're geniuses, because they're smart, because they're wise, because these are the people that are their biggest enemies. So if they can get them before they figure things out, or like tell the truth and expose what all of these people are doing, then then the charade's over, right? So like that's why there's so much desperation into making them be propped up as these heroes, like the astronauts and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And then, but they're blackmailed or bribed or, you know, presented with like really, really appealing offers that, you know, it's too hard to refuse. And, but they are also people that are being duped, right? They're being prostituted into deceiving us, unfortunately. And it's by design, right? They were the people that were the best of the best, right? The smartest of the smart, scholarships, awards, like all of these things, accolades and stuff like that. I know someone that's an astronaut and he is friggin' brilliant. He was brilliant where he went to school and multiple different education systems, brilliant, top of the line, but then also like physically like a friggin' physical specimen. Like and he and I were both like physically like super friggin' fit and also like smart. but he obviously pursued his career more than I did, especially as a man. Like it's more often they do that stuff. But again, like it's like the pay is appealing, the prestige. Like, does he know the reality of the world? Does he know that he's not going to be going into friggin' space or any moon missions anytime soon? Very smart, but like, is he awake? Right? Because again, I've said like there's a lot of brilliant people that are just so distracted or egotistical, or just like they're blocking the truth with nonsense, or not nonsense, but with like real life issues that they're being intentionally distracted with.
Vancouver, right? And so it's just an absolute monster. So Pierre Polyev, I posted the video on my YouTube channel. He's talking about, the three various bands who claimed all the land underneath Vancouver. And he says, we're working out a deal where they can basically directly tax corporations for, use of their land. But what he doesn't say, and he makes it sound like it's just reserve land, he doesn't tell people that they're claiming all the land underneath Vancouver. It's just a pure con job, right? Making it sound really nice.
Is it actually going to Indigenous people?
But it sets the precedence, that so for the various different bands who do direct taxations of, things that are going on with their land. And it's going to roll out to you and me, I think, down the road.
Right. Well, in terms of the 2030 agenda and the WEF's agenda of, you will one day own nothing and still be happy, maybe we can get into how this is being used to be a land grab for the UN. So it seems like on the surface that this is a good thing. We're giving back land to people who had it stolen from them or whatever. But in reality, behind the scenes, as you said, it's really the oligarchy, the system, the New World Order, who's going to, in the end, get this land. So how exactly does that work?
Well, I mean, when I see the legislation and I see UNDRIP itself, I don't see a particular connection of the UN being able to grab the land. But there are, like, Article 46 basically states, it's the very last article in UNDRIP, that no nation, no state, no group, can basically go against this declaration, and it all has to be in adherence to the UN Charter. So by Canada implementing this, I mean, it basically, in a proxy sense at least, is putting us under the UN Charter. That's where they want to go with all of this. Now we have our Canadian Charter, yes, that supersedes it right now, but basically that's where they want to go with this whole thing. So in that sense, it'll put us under the UN Charter, right?
Right.
So there's that. As far as, some people think that, that the various different Indian bands won't be able to manage all of this, and then they'll basically have the UN guys come in, and then they will manage it, and then when it all collapses, then they'll just roll it all. I don't see that. I don't see how that's possible. But one thing I do see, though, is that when people start losing, let's say, their fourth generation on their farms, they got 5,000 acres and it's their whole families there and everything else like that. If they're told to get off that land, they might just, start getting violent. And that's the whole thing. And they might say to themselves, well, hey, if there's no, the Indian bands that are claiming this land, if they're not around, then maybe I can keep my, it's to me, what it's doing is it's leading us to a civil war type hot issue, right, to some degree, probably to a smaller degree than a bigger degree, because it's going to be incremental, piecemeal, right?
Do they have to present any kind of proof that they are the rightful owners to this land that they are claiming, or can they just say it's mine?
Well, what I've seen with the court system is they're saying that because they didn't, in their system, that they didn't, they were basically living in the Stone Age, right? I mean, they didn't have, agreements and papers and stuff like that, that they have to go by their heritage, and their verbal, history, right? And so that can be presented in the court of law. But on top of that, though, because it's, all these people are being pressured to go and say that we acknowledge that we're on their land, I think that is going to be, probably the big one that's going to, say, what's going on. Now in Calgary, what they're doing is they're amalgamating, big cities with the counties and surrounding counties, and they're making kind of like a pyramidal system. And so you got this Calgary Regional Planning Commission or Board linked in with the counties that go around Calgary and all the small towns. And at the end of 2022, they had a meeting there, and there was a Métis chief from Red Deer, and he went down there and he basically was educating them that their land goes from Ponoka all the way down to the southern border, and Ponoka is north of Red Deer, so halfway between Calgary and Edmonton, all the way down to the southern border. Right. And these guys didn't say anything. They actually opened up their meeting saying that we acknowledge that we're on these lands, right?
Well, if there's no definition of Indigenous, couldn't this UNDRIP United Nations Declaration be used in other countries other than Canada as well?
Well, yeah, it is. It's going on. I mean, New Zealand, with the Maori, they're really far advanced as well. Australia as well. It's going on in the United States. So those folks down in the United States, they had better, listen up, because this is anywhere that, there's been colonialism, I guess, And I sent you that video there of David Lamenti. It's in the shorts section of my YouTube channel. And he was a justice minister. He stepped down now because of the corruption that's been going on. But basically in there, he says undoing 150 years of colonialism is more than just the mandate of one government, so.
150 years is also really inaccurate. And so what would you consider to be Indigenous? Because the earth has been was created by a creator of this cosmos, this electromagnetic reality, and so there have been peoples that have occupied and inhabited various continents and regions throughout the world, okay, including Canada. So people that think that they're Indigenous, well, guess what? There's people that came here before you as well. So are you classified as someone that colonized as well because you came through the Bering Sea or from Siberia, or from from the south? Because there's also accounts of that as well. In my family, we have been here and also procreated with Indigenous, what we call Indigenous, but the people that were here. And there were people here before them as well. Different skin colors, different eye colors, different hair colors, different, you name it. Since at least the 1200s, 1300s, and even 1400s. And even Jacques Cartier came here in the 1530s, like he was French. Champlain was 1608. So there's people so this is 400 years, over 400 years, not 150 years. What the hell are they talking about? And so there was French, there was multiple different Europeans that came of multiple different backgrounds, multiple different throughout the world. Okay, and and so there's so much more I can say about that. But I think what's going on right now is literally just it's a potential for land grabs. They're trying to get people. And people are increasing property tax as well, and which is disgusting. We're getting our land stolen from us. There's going to be people defaulting on their mortgages and stuff like that. And then there's going to be corporations and foreigners taking our homes, and they're going to be renting it to us at ridiculous rates, or for those who can afford it. And people are going to be heavily subsidized coming here from other countries. And by the way, there's even people from the UN, like I've reiterated, that give people credit cards or cards, whatever, and they top them up every single month, and they're actually transporting people, illegal immigrants as well, into the US from so many different areas, land, air, and sea. And so that is a thing. and if you think it's not happening in Canada, you're out of your mind. Even with what they're calling aid workers and students and stuff like that, this is for money, and it's to push people out. It's to demoralize us. It's to there's so much going on, and our government is too ignorant and entitled and rich and so far removed from reality that they're not seeing what they're doing is actually, unfortunately, their fault. They need to step down. Call me.
Think about what that means. What is undoing colonialism?
I don't want to adopt the mess that these Canadian members have implemented in cabinet for decades, but so an adult has to, right? And I would hire people like Dr. Jordan Peterson, and others that are experienced enough to unfuck this, man.
that's everything. If you drive on a road,
Nightmare.
it's colonialism. If you go ahead and fill up your vehicle at a gas station, that's colonialism. None of that would be here if it wasn't for, the settlers or the Europeans coming here, right?
Well,
And
I guess then the question now is, how on earth do we deal with this? Because, going up against the United Nations is almost like trying to hold back the waves of the oceans at times when they're literally stealing land. So what are some of the things that Canadians and other people who are seeing the threat here, what are some of the things we need to start doing today so that we can undo this this thing that's been around since I think 2007? What do we have to do to undo it all?
Well, it's pretty tough to undo it. There's a major force behind it. I mean,
Yep.
but what we can do practically, obviously, is to learn about it. That's the biggest thing. Tell other people about it and help them to understand it. If you can, go ahead and talk. It's the politicians who implement this on us. So educate the politicians. Now, if you go to your city or your town mayor or your county mayor or whatever, they're all beholden to, like has been proven in Alberta just recently, in Chestermere, basically the MLA, he toasted the mayor and 3 councillors, got rid of them because, and I talked to one of the councillors in another county, and they said that, because I asked, is the county a corporation? And the answer was yes, and that it's a subcorporation of Alberta Corporation. So it's at the provincial level that we have to really educate these people and get them to realize, hey, if you go along with this, you're going to go ahead and you're going to destroy it for your family and friends forever. And so you have to be able to, start standing up to this and whatever.
Yeah. Glenn Gower, Mayor Stittsville, still the mayor of Stittsville, and he is a big part also of what caused he destroyed Stittsville, and he's profited so much of the destruction, and he doesn't even care. And Jim Watson, he was the mayor of Ottawa. He resigned, and it should have been disgracefully fired, and he needs to be investigated. But he is also a big part of the complete destruction of Ottawa. And then even Brenda Lucky, like last year, she was able to resign, head of the RCMP, that literally destroyed our country, and not understanding what they're doing is absolutely what the UN, Agenda 2030, WEF, what they have been pushing now, for decades. It's so insane to me. And so I have those sent emails. And so if anyone wants to make a lawsuit, please contact me. I have the sent emails. I have the phone calls, and other people that I know also emailed Glenn Gower that were residents of Stittsville. And it said, he was very intimidating and threatening in the emails. And I don't care. I'm I have top secret government clearance. I already know who you are and who you're aiding and abetting and supporting. And there's been, by the way, 2 mayors of Ontario just in the last couple of years alone that are up on sexual assault charges and stuff like that against children, against minors. So that prawn stuff I was talking about, and they were hired by and in the same networks as Jim Watson. And it's just I'm just saying, those birds of a feather who flock together. I'm just saying, I was giving him this information as well, and I was getting the read receipt acknowledgements, not the read receipts, or the send, the sending. They received the emails, these offices, and then the phone calls, and no follow-ups. And I wasn't hiding my name. I wasn't hiding my address. I was giving it. And so, what do you do? I was giving this to law enforcement too. All that information, giving that to law enforcement, and the law enforcement officers that I know that were giving this to their chain of command, they're still suspended, charged. Over 20 years of service, and 25th of March, another hearing, their lawyer has to get flown in from Alberta because no one in Ontario she was able to find to represent her, even though she was giving medical, scientific, and government data to these people. I'm saying, I'm literally saying that there were people were literally put in these positions as the experts within cabinet or the experts they advised them. It was intentionally done. They didn't know it, or most of them didn't know it, but it was unintentionally we're part of a PSYOPs campaign, ladies and gentlemen. And if our cabinet members think that if they think they're doing such a good job, these fucking idiots have no idea that all 338 of them, these numpties for the like however long they've been in, okay, they've ruined it for themselves too, and their families and their friends and their communities. Like they've ruined everyone's lives. They may not feel it impact, you know, like they're not impacted or anything like that yet, but they will eventually. And there are people within their extended families and communities that they've destroyed their livelihoods.
Situation because they're under
They should
pressure
all
too,
be in jail.
right? But
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
they
like-
need to,
That's treason.
yeah, they need to get involved. And so our job of properly educating them as to what the consequences are a big deal. So that's
Right.
one thing we can do. If you live in Vancouver, go watch my video on what the strategy plan for, you know, and basically understanding that all of Vancouver's been claimed by 3 Indian bands. So, I mean, what are you going to do? When I presented that video, a lady just
And
phoned me.
I would like to do like some follow up on Indigenous, because like I know people that are European descent, full out white, and identify as Indigenous, and because of identifying as Indigenous with zero proof or anything to back it up, they are trying to get land rights and entitlements and stuff like that, even in Ontario. And so, are they white people that are exploiting or other peoples? Because there are white Indigenous peoples too, but like, are there certain people that are not? Are there certain people that don't have our best interest at heart, using this as an opportunity to exploit us further?
The other day, and she says, when I saw that video, I didn't think twice. I sold my properties and got out of there. You know, do what you think you got to do, right? But I mean, basically, that's the scenario, and the courts are behind it, from what I understand. So that's why the city has said, well, we acknowledge that these are the rights and title holders of all the land under Vancouver, right?
Right.
Okay, so that's what you can do there, is try to educate these people. If, you know, because I think down the road with Pierre Poilievre and his recent press conference there with these 3 Indian bands, basically, you know, saying that that he's in favor of a direct taxation of corporations. So if we end up getting a taxation on our land, what we need to do is say, no, we're not going to pay that, because no, it's not your land. You know, we've paid for it. This whole system has been built upon the fact that we're here, right? And fight it there, but the problem is that people, you know, they go along to get along. You know, they don't want to cause a ruffle, and you know, most people don't want to put at risk the fact, you know, they've got their house and everything else on the land, you know, so maybe just pay this inconvenience tax of whatever it might be, and we can just, you know, carry on. And to go and fight it, you might end up going to court, losing your land, and all of that kind of stuff, right? So it's going to be a tough fight, you know, for people to even, you know, wrap their brain around it, and to be willing to risk everything for it. But really, we're at war, is what's happening. We're under attack by the UN globalists, right? And they want to have it so that we will own nothing. They want to bring us into like a hybrid fascist communist type situation, where the corporations and government work together, and we're the serfs, in a sense, you know. And it's coming in fast. And that's why I ran in the 2019 federal election, because I saw this coming, you know, and I was trying to warn people that, you know, the UN wants to be able to do their 2030 agenda, and it's going to change everything in our lives, you know.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's hard for people to wrap their brain around that, because it reads so nice. It's the ultimate political doublespeak, but it reads like a communist manifesto when you really analyze it. But the best way to get people to wrap their brain around it is what the World Economic Forum says: by 2030, you'll own nothing. You know, people can understand that, right?
True. And I would have to agree. I think at this stage in the game, you know, awareness is going to be absolutely key. Education is key. Just getting Canadians and others to realize that this is even an issue in the first place is going to be important moving forward. So on that note, you know, you've been covering this, as I said, for like 5 years now. Where would you say is the best place for people to go online if they want to learn more about this from you?
Well, I sent you a bunch of links that are really pertinent to key videos that I've posted over the years. And so if you can just go ahead and put that in the comments section, pin it maybe, people can go ahead and follow those links. That's probably the best source. Other than that, there will be bcrising.ca. I sent you a link for the Zoom meeting there. You could probably maybe share that as well. That'll be on the 29th of February. And that's where Bruce Party, the professor of law, will be going over some of the key issues. He'll be speaking for the first half hour. And then myself and another fellow will be joining in, Joshua Lemons, and we're going to talk about this whole issue.
Perfect.
So that'll be very important. Yeah.
All right. I guess in closing, is there any other kind of points you want to make, or anything maybe we missed that you want to cover on this one?
Yeah, there's a couple points actually that are really key. With that Vancouver UNDRIP strategy plan, you can maybe pull up the graphic for people to see. And I like to go over some of it because, you know, Jagmeet Singh, whenever he'll be debating in different things, I remember with Laura Lynn Tyler Thompson there in the by-election of his, he, you know, called her a racist and stuff like that. And he's pretty quick to call people racist, right? And you get Trudeau doing the same thing. But in this UNDRIP strategy plan for Vancouver on page 17, there's a thing called environmental racism. Have you ever heard of that one?
Sound familiar?
Okay, environmental racism. Okay, so I'll just read a little bit from it. Okay, so hazardous industrial projects and other disruptive impacts from colonialization. That's going to be a big thing that we're going to have to face. And urbanization infringe on the ability of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh to exercise their inherent constitution, human rights, including the basic rights to harvest, steward, and reside in their traditional territories, which is basically all of Vancouver now that they've claimed, right? Lower down, it says here, the city is to conduct a review of hazardous industrial projects from the lens of Indigenous rights, you know. Going down further, they're to co-develop and implement a policy to assess current and future industrial infrastructure development through the lens of Indigenous rights and title and environmental racism, you know. So the fact that, you know, you're building a project means that it's racism against, you know, these bands, you know, it's absolutely insane. And that's where they're going to go with this. And they're going to have them be the stewards of the land to save Turtle Island. If people don't know what Turtle Island is, that's their belief system, that North America is this turtle. And if you go ahead and put a dam on a river, you're blocking the arteries of the turtle. Or if you're mining, then you're disrupting the nervous system of the turtle.
I don't disagree with that.
They're going to be used. The UN is going to be using these different bans to curtail and shut down all kinds of industry and whatnot in the future, right? Okay, so another one, the last one here on
there
that
is such thing as overdevelopment.
Environmental initiatives to ensure that they address the environmental racism, climate action strategy, healthy water plans, and goes on and on. So that's one key issue. The other issue to end here is that we're all going to be forced into their thinking and into their understanding, and actually we are going to have to learn about their different religious, you know, practices and stuff. For instance, if you want to graduate high school in BC now, you have to take a 4-credit mandatory course on Indigenous issues, and that's where it's starting. But let's say you don't agree with the course material, and you know, say, no, I don't agree, you know, and you give different answers and you fail it. You're not going to pass, you're not going to graduate high school, right? And so on that, I sent you a graphic that I snapped of it. And actually, if you look at the bottom, I highlighted in the bottom right-hand corner, it says the legal status of First Nations, you know, oral traditions. If you click on that, that's where you'll find that in a court of law, their oral traditions can actually be legal documents. Same thing goes with if you're a real estate agent in BC, you have to renew your license every few years, and you have to take courses. It's also with lawyers too. So everyone is being educated on this whole, you know, traditions of the Indigenous and everything else like that. And also, you know, educating you that you're on their land type of thing, right?
Yeah.
So this is massive.
Is one word for it.
Yeah. So anyhow, those are the last 2 points.
Yeah. Wow. This is such a big monster story. As you said, one of the biggest issues facing Canadians right now. And I would have to agree. I think a lot of people are unaware that this is happening in the first place. So maybe you could give a shout out to your X account, formerly Twitter, so people can keep up to date with you as you're going to, I'm sure, continue to cover this as it continues to develop.
Okay, thanks. Well, I mean, it's Ron Vaillant, last name V as in Victor, Aillant. You probably
Vaillant. So yeah, follow that guy.
put on the screen. That'd be nice. Okay, so I have a YouTube, channel where I post things, and I'm willing to go into the fringe, to experiment with different ideas of what's coming down. But I'm very good at seeing the future, and because I analyze what's going on and I can understand things. So it's a very good resource there. I'm on Facebook, but they're perpetually, censoring me there. It's under my name. Twitter, the same thing. It's under my name.
Okay, perfect. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to break this down for us. I feel we could have a conversation for 4 or 5 hours easily about this particular topic.
Anyway, I just wanted to share one more video. It's not a long one. And again, I wasn't going to do a video today, but I'm just stressed out. Like this stuff, like this, all of this stuff that's destroying Canada, that people are just not paying attention to, is just so fudging stressful because it literally impacts my life, my family's life, my community, other people in other countries. Like, it's just a nightmare. So this is from Stanton Cree 420. Georgia Tan, I don't know why I said it like that. Georgia Tan kidnapped and sold 5,000 infants to rich Americans.
Newborn infants and then sold them to between 1924 and 1950. Georgia Tan kidnapped more than 5,000 newborn infants and then sold them to the ultra wealthy on a nationwide black market child trafficking network. More than 500 of those infants would die before being sold due to abuse, neglect, disease, and malnutrition. Some of the babies were ripped from their mother's arms right off the streets in broad daylight. They were kidnapped from churches and daycare centers where they may have been playing. In most cases, the infants were taken directly from hospitals after doctors handed newborns over to people they thought were nurses, but they were actually criminals disguised as nurses, all part of a massive black market that sold babies. High-ranking politicians ensured Georgia Tan was protected so that she could continue selling infants to the highest bidder. And as unbelievable as all of this sounds, it is 100% true. Check this shit out.
Tan pulled off her brazen scheme through operating the Tennessee Children's Home Society, a society which, on the surface, was doing the Lord's work, finding homes for orphaned children. In reality, it worked as a cover for Tan to funnel children into her care, only for her to turn around and sell them on the black market for extreme profit. In the nearly 30 years Tan and the society were in operation, she managed to kidnap and sell an estimated 5,000 babies. These weren't orphaned children placed under her care. They were stolen right from under their parents' noses. How? How could anyone get away with kidnapping and selling children for nearly 30 years right here in America? She did it with help from friends in high places. She took children who came from poor families, for the simple reason that poor families at the time didn't have the necessary resources to search for one of their children should they go missing. If families did file a report, Georgia Tan would have it handled by her close friend E.H. Crump, a powerful tycoon and the so-called boss of Memphis. Crump would make sure the reports of missing children were ignored. She also had an elaborate system for taking newborn babies from hospitals and mental wards, bribing doctors and nurses to help protect the children, and then tell their unsuspecting parents that their baby was stillborn.
So mental wards, and you'll see that there were like mental wards and adoption agencies and nunneries and all this stuff in times in North America when we were going through what we'd call resets, when there was when the populations were low again, but there's so much history and proof and accounts of ancient advanced civilizations that predate what we're being led to believe, that we're more evolved, like I keep saying, possibly larger, absolutely larger in my humble opinion as well, different sizes, pygmies as well, like smaller as well, and that inhabited these spaces, and that where there was even possibilities of being over 50 billion people as well. But there are people that fearmonger, and also with the population stuff, they need to keep the population under a certain amount so that they can continue to control us, right? Like you can only control a certain amount of people before it just like gets out of control and people figure things out and starts, making different life choices based on new information.
Tan would take off with the baby, with the child's parents believing their newborn to be deceased. She even had a system for snatching children right off the street. She took children from churches or daycare centers while they played with their friends. They'd end up in the arms of a uniformed social worker under Tan's employ, and they'd never be seen by their birth parents again. Once the children were under her care, and their parents were none the wiser, Tan would wipe their identities and sell them to couples looking to adopt, leaving them completely in the dark about where the child came from by falsifying or destroying their documents. Tan pocketed millions of dollars selling children to out-of-state couples, charging a $5,000 premium on out-of-state adoptions. Almost 90% of her sales, which in this context, sales is a truly disgusting word, went to wealthy couples in New York and Los Angeles who could afford the steep pricing of Tan's services, including actress Joan Crawford, who adopted her twin daughters from Tan. It should be noted none of the adoptive parents had any chance to suspect what they were doing was wrong. On its face, Tan's operation was a legitimate adoption agency. Of course, simply adopting a baby and then never having questions about where that child came from isn't possible. But if the adoptive parents ever questioned Tan about issues that arose, things like missing birth certificates or clearly falsified medical histories, Tan had an answer. If the new parents ever had any suspicion that anything fishy was going on, Tan would threaten them with legal action through one of her major accomplices, family court judge Camille Kelly. Judge Kelly used her position of power to sanction Tan's activities and threaten the adoptive parents with taking away their adoptive children if they continued to make a fuss or ask questions. They would also be threatened with being roped into whatever legal ramifications Tan may or may not have faced. I mean, they did use her services, so technically they were involved in an illegal enterprise themselves. And here was a judge telling them they were complicit. Needless to say, this blackmail coming from the U.S. judicial system itself made a lot of folks go quiet.
Oh my goodness. Oh, such is life these days. And so, yeah. I think that it's time that people within cabinet start getting the training that myself and people like me provide. The hostile environment awareness training course packages, the standing rapid deployment team courses for people that respond to natural and man-made disasters. Like, they need to be aware. They need to take these courses. They need to take these courses. And then people like Bill Blair can get a taste of what it feels like to be I wouldn't say, because there's portions of the course where there's like conduct after capture, so you cannot, so like there's actually certain people, again, it's part of training, and it's done safely and by experts, but like people get kidnapped, right? And or taken, but again, it's all safe and secure. It's in a training environment. It's like on bases, that's in secure locations, like no one's around, we're not recording, like there's no, anyway, it's there's reasons for it. But there's also like people that do get handcuffed and or that could be in there as well, and or falsely detained and stuff like that as well. And so like I feel like people like Bill Blair would benefit from going through these things, because then he would see what it feels like, and understand it more. But not even just that, he would understand the reality of the world more, because right now he's lying about everything that's going on in the world internationally. And I keep on screen capturing and saving his friggin' tweets and stuff like that on his X. And like even on his LinkedIn and stuff like that, this guy does not know what he's talking about. He has no idea what he's talking about. So as a Minister of National Defense, I feel like you should have more than just like Chief of Police from Toronto under your belt, especially when your reputation is terrible and all the crimes against humanity that were committed under your watch, buddy. You should not have been promoted. You should have been in jail for that. But of course, because you're connected, it's rules for thee and not for me, right? Like the hypocrisy in that is annoying. This guy needs jail. The mayors that were complicit in all of this stuff too, supporting the military pharmaceutical industrial complex to ruin our lives and destroy our resources. Jail. And so, yeah, not a whole lot happening. Oh, Mark Sargent was saying good news about the Anarchapulco, that pretty much all speakers are obviously critical thinkers, but they're either questioning the globe or fully flat earthers now. and I guess this is like the first time where it's like there's more of a presence of that demographic there. And so it was too last minute for me to even try to make it. And then there's been family with health issues. Like I still have like a family member in the hospital even now, going to be released any day now. And it's just been nuts. And then to watch my dogs, right? Like I'd have to find someone to watch my dogs or whatever, or take them or find a way to take them with me. But I don't know. I should probably plan something in Canada because like I don't even know if anything like that's ever been planned here. Just like to have like a gathering, like a speaking convention or something like that. But like, I wouldn't even want to advertise it because there's so many friggin' trolls. And again, like there's some people that would just want to ruin it. Like there'd be more people trying to ruin the event for anyone that just would want to discuss things and just have like a nice gathering, right? Like there's always this friggin' like Ottawa's like the worst for it too. Because even for the March for Freedom in September, it was just parents like speaking out on grooming and hormone blockers for children, in general of any age. When you even have aquatics associations saying that they will not allow men to compete in the women's section if they have not shown proof of puberty blockers before the age of 12. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Before the age of 12, you need proof, and then you're going to allow this? You're going to incentivize families to put their children on hormone blockers before the age of 12? Are you friggin'? That blows my mind. Oh my god, that's even like that's worst case scenario. Oh my god. But anyway, so many tangents, but there was a counter protest, and it was like, and there was a lot of people that were being violent. They were being crazy. They were taking over like the protest, not with anything sensical. It was all nonsensical. Like a lot of screaming. There was some like barking, again, hitting people, like not very inclusive. And these were to parents, and there was religious people. Oh my god. And there was even like Amish people and like fully covered like in religious garb and stuff like that, and being like women that were dressed in like almost nothing, and men with like assless chaps and stuff like that, and like nipple rings and friggin' like cow friggin' bell just like saying the most disgusting things to these people, like as if they were like the enemy. Like, what are you talking about? No one's the enemy here. You're so fucking brainwashed. But then there was also like heads of cabinet. Well, there was heads of political parties. I mean, like Jagmeet Singh and Chrystia Freeland and countless others that were in support of going against the March for Freedom, like so in solidarity with the people that were going against it, the counter protesters. So it's incredible. And then there was like so many law enforcement people there that were also on the side of the people that were counter protesting. They were all public works government employees that just worked downtown, and it was a day off for them. It was a Friday. They got it off. And there was even emails being passed around to just like, it's a day off of work, it's paid, but like just go downtown and just like disrupt families and people coming in that are Amish and nuns and indigenous people, and call them the worst names and attack them. You fucking crazy morons. Like, no one wants this. Like, just get a real job. Oh my god. It's so annoying. Anyway, I can go on for hours, but yeah, I don't know. Like I should set something up. Like it would have to be something that I don't know. I hate to say closed group, but like I just to start, because like I am in a very, very volatile area for anyone that speaks out against the majority. Like people feel like they're vindicated and or even like entitled or incentivized to be super aggressive towards anyone that goes against the mainstream media, like I keep on saying. But anyway, on that note, I will leave it at that, and I hope that everyone has a wonderful rest of your day.